Bismillahi wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to Becoming an Emotionally Intelligent Muslim mini course. My name is Muhammad Javed, so we'll get into video 1 right away of the 3-part video series. Let me ask you a few questions. Now, do you find it difficult to control your anger and you feel that your emotions get the better of you? That the emotions are in the driver's seat and they're driving you where they want? Do you feel stressed and overwhelmed at work? Maybe you have a new responsibility to manage other people, or maybe you just can't get along with your colleagues or your classmates at school or university, and it's frustrating you. Perhaps you are frustrated with your marriage and you're tired of the daily arguments, and sometimes you just feel like you don't want to come home, and you feel that you are stuck in a marriage with a spouse that doesn't understand you or you can't communicate effectively with. Now, maybe what you might need or what might help you in dealing with these frustrations and removing these barriers towards your success in your different roles in life would be what is called emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, what is that? Well, it can be quickly or effectively described as the ability to think before you speak and act. Say something happens, a stimuli, and then you react immediately without thinking. You react based on emotions. Now that is the opposite, lack of emotional intelligence. Now, something happens, a trigger happens. Somebody tells you something that you don't like, an insulting name or an insulting nickname. Or maybe your boss yells at you at work and you feel your anger rising. Now you think before you respond, you think about the consequences of what would happen if you punch your boss in the face or if you say something nasty to your spouse. So you would think and choose the appropriate response, and that is the essence of emotional intelligence. Now, it is a skill, an art, a key ingredient found in the lives of successful leaders and individuals. You might have heard the famous saying when you were growing up at school and at home: study well, work hard, get good grades, and you will be successful in life. But what really is success in life? Is it truly that materially successful people such as top businessmen, executives, political leaders, sportsmen, and teachers were all toppers in their schools or universities? Is our IQ or our intelligence given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the ultimate determinant of our success? What about EQ? What about emotional quotient, which is a measure of emotional intelligence? Well, believe it or not, it is the X factor, the hidden factor that successful people usually possess that helps them propel into bringing out their best in themselves while inspiring and motivating others to become great leaders. Now, as you can see in this graph, initially early on in your career, it has been observed that your intellectual or your conceptual skills or your technical skills play a much more important in your success. But as you grow up the corporate ladder and you reach more senior positions, as a supervisor, you're responsible for managing other people, as a company CEO maybe, or a political leader, or whatever position that you aspire to become, as you become more of a leadership position, as you become more of a leader, then your emotional intelligence plays a much more important role than your intellectual or technical skills. Now this became evident in a study that was done by Lewis Terman, a social scientist and a psychologist affiliated with Harvard University. Now he had a theory that it was the high intelligent or the high IQ people that were the movers and shakers in the society who would shape the world in every field of influence, from science, politics to business and medicine and so forth. So he decided to give some evidence to back his theory, and he selected about more than 1,000 high IQ individuals over a period of years who had a score of IQ of 140 or above, and followed them through their adulthood, so from their childhood to their adulthood. To his surprise, the results in their adulthood did not quite turn out as he expected. In fact, about a third of the people whom he studied were successful in their careers, in their family lives, and so forth. But one third of the people were just normal average people. And what's even more surprising, there was yet another one third, the last third, who were what we consider abject failures in a dunyai sense, in a material perspective. They were failures in their personal lives, in their marriages, in their family life. They were failures in their professional lives. And this was so intriguing. So once upon further inspection, he found out that really the true ingredient to success, to material success, was actually social intelligence, the ability to interact with other people effectively, rather than pure intellectual or technical skills. So, with that being establishes the importance of emotional intelligence, let's take a step back and listen and understand what are actually emotions. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, وَأَنَّهُ هُوَ أَضْحَكَ وَأَبْكَى. And it is He, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who makes one laugh and weep. Allah is the one who gave us this amazing ability, this ni'mah that we have to thank Allah for, to be able to experience happiness or sadness, to experience feelings. We don't think emotions, we feel emotions. In fact, the memories that we ascribe to things, to places, to people is actually derived from our emotions that we experience interacting with them. Let me give you a better example. Some of you might have gone for Hajj or for Umrah. And recall the first time you entered Makkah and you saw the Haram al-Sharif and you saw the Kaaba. What were the emotions that you were feeling? Did you feel peaceful, tranquility, exhilarated, amazed, and awed at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the sight of the Kaaba, to be so close to the Kaaba, to the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And when you think back many years later of your first trip to the Haram, and you look back, you feel the emotions of what you experienced at that time, and you feel happy and peaceful. So it is those emotions that colored your memory. Similarly, you might have had a very nasty experience with your boss. He's yelling at you, maybe even cussing at you. So when you think about your boss later on, it's those dirty feelings, it's those anger that comes up because you felt that way when he was interacting you without giving you respect. So it is our emotions that color our experiences. It is a reaction. It is a source of information. It is a signal, and it cannot reason on its own. So as I mentioned, it's a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that gives us meaning to experiences. And it's a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to see how we utilize our emotions. Our success depends upon how we are able to control our emotions and channel it, either to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or to follow our desires and disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let me give you a simple example. Let's say you're a man and then you look at a beautiful woman walking in front of you in skimpy clothes. And what's the first emotion that comes? What is the impulse that we feel, that we want to continue staring and then make our desires control us, right? So in that instance, are we looking at following Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or disobeying Him? Clearly disobeying Him, right? Then if our emotions and impulse overtakes us, we might be even further motivated to go and contact that person, maybe talk to her, get her number, and maybe, you know how the sequence goes. It starts with a smile, and then we know what it might land up with: illegal relationship with that particular person, or zina, which is a major sin in Islam. So in that sense, in that scenario, that person is actually landing up, making his emotion or impulse leading to a path of destruction, following shaitan, and leading to disobeying Allah. Then on the other instance, if that person remembers the advice of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to lower the gaze and looks down and turns the other way, then in that case he's channeling his and uses finds a halal way of satisfying those desires by finding a spouse and looking at the institution of marriage. Then he would be looking at fulfilling those desires in a halal way. Similarly, many other examples can be given about reacting to emotions and how we can channel them in the proper way to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, be it fear, be it anger, be it love, or any other emotion. In essence, we don't have an option over our emotions. We can only choose how to respond. Alright, now that we've we've looked at what are emotions and we have a basic understanding of what is emotional intelligence, let's delve into the science behind emotions to get a better understanding of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created this wonderful, marvelous process. Emotions are essentially signals that travel through the neuron superhighway in our bodies that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created. And these signals enter the brain through the spinal cord, which is the entry point, and the base of the brain, which is near the back of the brain. So the front part of the brain is responsible for processing processing our rational thoughts, to think rationally, logically. And the back part of our brain is responsible for the emotional thinking, which is the limbic system. So these signals pass through the emotional filter before reaching the thinking center. So in a sense, we think emotionally, we feel emotionally before we think rationally. So what in essence that it means for emotional intelligence is that initially, to react to anything that happens in our life, we feel the emotions. But if we wait a little bit, then the signals, it allows the time to make those signals enter into the front part of the brain where we can process them rationally and we can choose an appropriate response to that particular incident or event that occurred. Now, in some instances, if a crisis happens, then we go into crisis mode or an amygdala hijack. An amygdala, which is that small part that you see in the screen in the picture, it sends the fight, flight, or freeze response depending upon our personality type. So it is that natural response that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created. For example, when we see a saber-toothed tiger or a lion or a bear when we're in the forest by ourselves, what is the first instance that we do? We run as fast as we could, right? And we feel we have more energy to run faster than we usually do. And that is by that amygdala hijack. Or sometimes we get so angry and frustrated that we are consumed by our anger. And then we have so much energy to fight and shout and argue that when we think back at that particular incident, it was like a different person. It was like, that was not me. What happened at that time, right? So these are examples of the amygdala hijack that occurs. Now, this emotional intelligence, yes, it is important for success in the material sense, for this dunya, with how we interact with people at work or even at our home with our spouses and having a successful marriage. But believe it or not, it is also very important for our success in akhirah. How, you may ask? Let's reflect on this important hadith. Prophet Muhammad said that the most complete in faith are those best in their character, those who are easy to socialize with, and those who get along with others and others get along with them. There is no good in the one who cannot get along with others and others cannot get along with them. This is recorded in Tirmidhi with a grading of Sahih. Now take a look at this picture. What is it? If you guessed an iceberg, you are correct. But what does an iceberg have to do with emotional intelligence, you may ask? Well, let me tell you what it means. The top part that you see is what is visible to others. And as you can see, it is a very small portion of the iceberg. And similarly, in your personality, what others see is only a very small part of your personality. What they cannot see, what's hidden underneath the surface, is much more critical and important, and it shapes how the other people see outside. So in essence, your intrapersonal or your internal skills are as crucial, or if not more crucial, than your external or interpersonal skills, how you interact with other people. So what are these external and internal components of emotional intelligence? As you can see on the screen, the self-awareness, self-regulation, self-motivation, and self-purification, these are the internal dimensions of emotional intelligence in what I call the EI plus model. And the social skills and empathy, and these are the external dimensions of the emotional intelligence. So I won't get into these in detail right now. We will get into them in a later video, in the video number 3. But in essence, self-awareness is the ability to be aware of yourself, your goals, your personality type, and know yourself and self-esteem and self-confidence all comes under self-awareness. Self-regulation is the ability to regulate your emotions, to control your emotions, to keep them in check and not let your emotions control you. Self-motivation is being aware of what motivates you, having a clear vision and goal in life, and knowing your purpose of your existence in this dunya. Self-purification or tazkiyatun nufus is the process of purifying yourself so that you establish a strong bond with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And lastly, social skills is your interactions, your ability, your skill set of interacting with other people and networking, building a strong network with other people, as well as your ability to empathize with others and show empathy. So that in essence is the different dimensions of emotional intelligence. Now, for anything that we want to do, we usually as human beings look at role models and who are better than us and who can be better than anybody else than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who without a doubt is the ultimate emotional intelligence role model.
لقد كان لكم في رسول الله أسوة حسنة لمن كان يرجو الله واليوم الآخر وذكر الله كثيرا.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said in the Quran, indeed in the Messenger of Allah you have an excellent example to follow for who hopes in Allah and the last day and remembers Allah much. In Surah Ahzab, verse number 21. And yet, in another surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّكَ عَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. Indeed, you are the gold standard of character. You are the role model of character. So in the next video, we'll look at a few examples of how we can extract lessons from the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam on interacting with others. So look forward to seeing you then. Stay tuned.